a very important decision. Very important decision of Domingo de Salazar, which is to call for a synod. This was a meeting of clergy and of laymen in positions of responsibility. And the purpose of the synod was to discuss the obstacles to evangelization in the colony and how to remove them, to remove those obstacles, and to discuss how to go about evangelization itself. No? The immediate goal was to produce a handbook for confessors and missionaries, and that handbook was the way the missionaries was going to fight against the Spaniards who were maltreating Filipinos. Okay, I am tempted to take a break right now, but it looks quite early, 11:15. Okay, so we'll continue. Carry for 6 more slides, and then we'll take that break. All right, this is shameless advertisement of my book, okay, published by the Ateneo. That's going to be our main source in this part of this lecture, okay? And what I want to do is to go through what you might call a prologue to the documents that were supposed to form part of the handbook for the confessors. Because that prologue tells us what the situation was in the Philippines, and especially in Manila, in the Manila area, just before the Synod of Manila. And my comment is that it was hair-raising. So I'm not going to read these excerpts from the prologue because we don't have much time. Okay? And because in translating them, I try to follow the original Spanish as much as possible, which means that the sentences are kilometers long. Okay, you may complain about my decision, but it's my decision. When you do your translation, do it your way. Okay, 6 guidelines is the title of the prologue. It was said in the Commonwealth when this assembly was being held, and some even proposed it, that it seemed to be harshness in land so new and isolated, and in which the administration of justice had been barely initiated, and things were so confused and so entangled. Okay, basically, ang nangyayari dito, there was a party, people among the missionaries and laypersons. Laypersons were only, in fact, 6, if I remember right. Among the missionaries, these were only Augustinians and Franciscans. The other orders had not yet arrived. So there was a group of them who were saying, wait a minute, I don't think we should be very harsh in applying the law, because we're just beginning in this colony. And people don't know what to do, the officials themselves, the soldiers, etc. So there it says, to demand too much to judge matters following the laws of ancient lands and the principles of true theology and pure justice, and not to adjust to the conditions of the land. Okay, that's the proposal. Let's not be very strict with people here in the colony of Manila. And the reply was, forget it. Only the pure truth and what doctors teach, doctors of the church, will be considered. That was the reply. Okay? Matapang. So, I suppose pinagbotohan ito. The assembly voted on it. They first debated it. Then they voted on it, and this is what passed. No, we're going to apply the law strictly, right? Now, this is a third guideline. I did not choose all the 6 guidelines. The third guideline gives us a snapshot of how the guilty Spaniards were. Let's see. Right, the missionaries say, because here we are rigorous only to the persons who would have need of it, meaning the bad Spaniards, or who does not want to adhere to reason, truth, and justice, but rather, here we go, no? So this is what you find in yellow. But what they want to do is to live laxly outside the pale of any law and have a good time and do nothing but follow his appetites and greed, amusing himself, being rich and honored at the expense of the sweat, work, sufferings, and lives of the poor and pusillanimous. And so it is a very deceitful and perverse pity too, etc. Continue. We'll look at that in a while, but I want to pause. Because there you have a contrast. A contrast between the Spaniards and the Filipinos. And I would like to call your attention to the adjectives used to describe the Filipinos. Poor and pusillanimous. Yung pusillanimous, I think that it means shyness. They don't want to act. They don't want to complain. I would say one reason why they would just accept the way things were, those who did, not everyone did, is because, in fact, this was not an unusual part of native culture coming from their own kabarangay. The tattoo had tremendous power. How dare I say this? Well, because in the manual prepared for confessors, there was a chapter, now lost, entitled The Abuses of the Native Chiefs on Their Own People. Why was it lost? Well, there were around 4 chapters lost of the manual for confessors. Unfortunately, one of them was that. If you will buy my book and you read the introduction, there you will see an analysis of 4 passages in the remaining manual which talk about how the Filipino rulers would oppress their own people. I'm sorry, but we don't have time for me to go through them. But I wanted to call your attention to that word, pusillanimous, because it appears again in other documents. And, I'm a teacher. This is a problem up to today. I look at my students, I think it's pusillanimity. Ayaw magtanong. I'm going to say. Perverse pity for maintaining order among those who eat and have an easy time and enjoy a good and happy life only because it strikes someone that we demand much, because there is much that is ill done or ill-gotten. And third, we are very rigorous for the benefit of the unfortunate Indians who are so cowed and afflicted because of lack of justice and fairness, and are so burdened and abused, persecuted, and many of them dead. These Indians, of course, Indios, were the converts. So you can see one of the reasons why the missionaries were so upset. You know, it's as if they converted Filipinos in order to make them slaves of the Spaniards, which some people are repeating in their textbooks. Well, here you have the more complex picture. Fourth guideline. It was said that to feel cowardice or difficulty in determining and declaring the truth purely and to claim that it was too strict sprang naturally in those who determined in these lands cases, etc., etc. All right, there's a description of how bad the situation was, so that what would be scandalous to an outsider was no longer scandalous to someone living in Manila. And here we have that passage. It says, because people would do what was wrong, no? And then there in that long portion in yellow, it says, with no shame on the part of those who do them, or scandal in those who see them committed, or punishment from the judges who know of them, or notice from the confessors who every year swallow them here and there, or remedy from the king who is so far away, or resistance or even complaints for those who suffer them. So, you know, each of these phrases, they refer to a different set of persons in the Spanish city of Manila and the pueblos nearby. But if you put them all together, you can see what there was a mess. And it says at the bottom, these people who were violating law, they were stout men, ferocious, foul-mouthed, unruly, and troublemakers. In short, Manila in 1582 was a wild, wild west. But you can see from the list of complaints, missionaries were not exempting themselves. They were blaming those who were lax in confessions. They're even blaming the king. No remedy from the king. Sixth and last guideline, and then we take our break. If these counsels are necessary in order to be able to determine the truth, okay, that was the whole purpose of the synod, to determine the truth. I mean, the truth of what's going on, and then there would be the truth of why this was bad. And that's what they had to teach from the pulpit, as it says there. They are even more necessary in order to follow it in the confessional and confessions, where it is necessary to break with all human respects and even die for this if necessary, as the prophets, apostles, and holy martyrs did. This was very striking to me when I first read it. Oh, these poor guys, they're getting ready to be killed by their own countrymen to tell them what was wrong with what they were doing. Okay. Yes, I have a slide which will tell us what the response was of the Spaniards living in Manila to the conclusions of the Manila Synod. But my purpose here is just to make you have a sense of what the situation was in Manila and environs just before the Synod of Manila. All right. So I was reading this slide. It's something that we've already seen, but just to let you know that it did not go away, this question, does Spain have any right to be in the Philippines? And actually, what was not being questioned was the evangelization or the spread of Christianity in the Philippines. It's Spanish rule. You know, the fact that they were collecting tribute, right? That's what bothered the missionaries a lot. No? And you can see that that's the part in red. For the execution of this mission, he can send men to give security to the ministers of the gospel and protect the recently converted Christians, and to do in their land whatever should be necessary for the temporal government in order to obtain this spiritual end. So the point here is that this is the only reason that the Spanish king would have any temporal power or political power in the Philippines. It's just to serve the gospel and nothing else. Now, the truth of the matter is, if you do a little bit of research, then you realize that the Spaniards, until the 19th century, and even for most of the 19th century, they just stayed in Manila. They did not fan out into the provinces. Well, earlier I mentioned to you that in fact there was a law that prohibited them from doing that. But aside from that, you do have this concern. So those who would be going to the provinces would be those who were interested in evangelization. And those who were not, which were practically all of them, they stayed in Intramuros for the galleon trade. Okay. When a punitive expedition is made, burning houses, palm groves, and fields, robbing and killing indiscriminately, the governor must not only make restitution for the damage done to the subject Indios, but also for what is done to those who are in rebellion and not subject. What are they talking about? So the missionaries were complaining on behalf of the Christian converts, who were being attacked. Right? But then here they're saying, hey, it doesn't mean to say they can attack the non-Christians. Even the non-Christians cannot be attacked. Ganyang kapuro yung attitude ng mga missionaries. For in addition to the fact that this kind of expedition, as experience shows, does not lead to emendation but to further rebellion, it is also very unjust. For the beginning of these rebellions comes from the Spaniards, for their having treated the Indios quite the contrary to what God and the king command. I mean, this is how strict the missionaries were. This one is now referring to alcaldes mayores, right? So we'll go very quickly through this. They must perform their office themselves and not send lieutenants, no? Okay. It is necessary that they carry out their offices themselves, I'm here in the middle, and not by means of lieutenants, will not fulfill the intention of the king who placed them in their position. An alcalde mayor who does not do so and does not fulfill the obligations of his office sins mortally. I want to stop there. Mortal sin. Okay. Of course, we are still at the time when the Spaniards had some faith left. Mortal sin. Ganun kagrabe yung judgment ng mga missionaries. And the alcalde mayor is obliged to restore whatever damages come by his fault through his absence, both to the community and to particular individuals. And cynically would say, wala namang ginawa sila. Just wait for the later slide. Caught with corruption, and I never hear. It is a greater act of tyranny which the alcalde mayor administers justice and does not permit that this be done by means of the. Okay, so what he mentions here is that the synod mentions here is that sometimes the Filipino converts or the missionaries, they try to bring about an understanding among people who have a lawsuit, no? And then they are stopped by the alcalde mayor because he wants to make money out of the case. Okay, we continue. Another thing, alcalde mayor may not buy or sell in his district nor its vicinity. You know, the problem was until the 19th century, in fact, the office of the alcalde mayor was for sale. And so the government in Manila knew that the alcalde mayor in some way would try to recover his payment for that office. And part of it was this, to buy or sell in his district. So some alcaldes mayores would forbid all trade except with them. And here is an abuse that they would commit. The alcalde mayor would take their supplies, it's in red, against or apart from their will at a lesser price when there is an abundance, for in this way he causes a shortage so that at a later time he can sell the articles at a very high price. Okay. And here, this is still the portion on the alcalde mayor, but there's something about the datos. No? At the end of this, it says, the same applies to the injustices which Indios of the lower class receive from their superiors and their chiefs and others whosoever they may be. Sino itong superiors and their chiefs? Yung mga Kastila? Of course not. Kaya nga sabi lower class eh. These are fellow Filipinos.